proof of. Okay? What we're talking about now is material that from water hitting the ground and going through it. We're not over where the bank is at. So the water over there, they've got a drainage swell that takes it out to the front of the building. But what they have right now on the back side of the building, it runs along those footings out towards the building because they've still got material over there that hasn't gone in or hasn't been removed. They've got to put a drainage a drainage line in that it takes time to get the submittals. The contractor has to submit them, they've got to review them, it's got to come back to the civil engineer. So what's in the spec is they have to do dewatering. So they dig ditches, they dig pits, et cetera, et cetera. So the money that you have spent was money for soils that were found during the proof run. That's not because of rainwater coming off. We're talking about now because you have silty soils and the water's infiltrating through it and it's destroying material that's been placed. So we don't have to do a change order. But to move the project forward, and what he is saying and what we're saying is that if we either have to wait or we have to do over excavation as we hit that bad material. Or not bad material, but material has deteriorated since it's been placed.
The areas where you're talking about it was like he said, was during the earthwork package, and so that I forget the total square footage was like 9,000 square feet of material had to be taken out and replaced with stone. This was before.
But even then, once the problem was noted, there's been standing water on that site since.
Yeah, since the beginning.
I mean, and I think every basketball game that any parent has gone to a slots system for November, somebody said something, there's been not a problem, there's standing water out there.
Well, you realize that we're like 4.5 feet above where existing building is. So what we're doing isn't really affected by the standing water that's been here all these years. We're at a much higher elevation. We're loading the site up. So this isn't a have-to piece. You don't have to do this. We're just saying to keep the project moving. You can consider this if you don't want to do it. That's fine. There is no you have to do it. The construction manager has to lead the project, and they've got to get the permanent drain line in that will help solve some of the problems on the back side of it. But we're not back there trying to put footings in. They're on the other side where it's all field, right? But they've got time to get that in. So they're working on getting that piece in. And that's something that we have said to them at the last progress meeting. I'm not sure. I think you were there and we talked about it and told them it's got to go in. So
Total cost in DG right now.
Total package deal, 17.
Contingency built in there too on this, that's right.
There was roughly $700,000 in contingency.
So, I mean, what we're looking at right now, is we decide to keep digging, filling in, or wait. That's the decision we're looking to make now, right? If we wait, it's just gonna be, it's just scraps, because it's gonna rain. We know it's gonna rain. So, I mean, I don't know how many more, what we're looking for. You put in drainage systems, drainage ditches, gravity drainage, pumps with drainage, I mean, right? They're there.
And the permanent power is in the process of getting installed, or not permanent power, temporary power is getting in place. And once that happens, they can leave the drains running continuously.
Yes.
So
what they're doing is as it rains, they're putting pumps in, but the pumps aren't sitting there in a location with hose. So I was just at the site. I spent quite a bit of time there this afternoon walking. There was one area where there was water, and it's coming off by the kitchen where they had put the stone in, and it's just a little bit of water in those footings. It's an open footing. They haven't poured the concrete there. They're working in the opposite direction, and I'm assuming they're coming in and pumping that off as it builds up.
So our best guess, we don't know. So, I mean, I'm of the opinion that we continue or we just delay. I mean, one or two. I'm of the opinion we continue, all right? And up to a certain point,
Say, can the board approve up to a certain amount?
yes,
And then at that point,
come back.
sit back down at the table?
That's my opinion. We approve up to what you're saying, no more than $60,000 worth of material being rocked, and I'm just throwing that out, all right? That's not
Just a
necessarily
dollar,
what has
yes.
to be done. But once you see that 60,000, so
Yeah.
you come back and look and see
As
how
we would,
much we completed.
if we were to approach that, absolutely, yeah, I follow you. That would be a great
But I'm
scenario.
only, I mean, I don't know much about what's going on here.
I don't have a problem with that. My concern was, first thing like Beth, because I went back and read the GEO report, and the way I understood it, all that you're talking about doing should have been done before this has even started. That was my first concern. The second thing is, I'm concerned that this water is coming up from the bottom. Every time the river goes up, y'all are going to be dealing with water coming up. It's not just the rain that's coming down. Part of that area of the county that you all are in. Ask any of the farmers that are out there. So, and I don't have a problem doing up to a dollar amount like Mr. Waller said. What I don't want to see happen is we're going to approve 60,000 and we get along into the springtime and y'all come back and go, well, that 60,000 worked really good. We need another 60,000 so we can go another 200 feet. Do you understand where I'm headed with that, Johnny? So that's some of my concerns. I don't have.
see that happen either, Mr. Mayor, but the fact of the
No.
matter is, I mean, we're dealing with a site that's been known to have been in a floodplain at one time, I think.
It is now
Built
up around it, yeah.
And it's wet, it's gonna get wetter.
It's going to keep doing that way.
Time frame for working, so
Right,
I'm just thinking, let's keep moving as best we can.
right.
And give you
And I'll say this,
go ahead and do what can be done.
the more, I'm sorry, go ahead. Now, the more footer they get in the ground, if we do run into a time period where we're getting some rain, that gives them more opportunity to back up and do their stem walls and whatnot. So
So, and the other thing is that AEI has agreed to come out and do this testing at their cost. So they're not required to do the type of testing they're doing. They're doing it to move the project forward. And so we work with them to get them to do it. So I think the system that we have is that they're getting out in front of it. They're doing that additional testing to make sure these place materials haven't degraded. Okay? Then they're coming back and getting as much footing as they can in. And then when they can't do that, they're going to stop and do the stem walls. So that's what they've done up to this point as they move through it. So they went at about 120 additional feet tested, if I remember correctly.
yes,
While they were testing that and getting it done, and we had all that rain back before the last board meeting, they were doing the stem wall. Now they've caught up and we're moving forward. So hopefully we can continue to move that piece forward like that and not get into the $60,000. I mean, that's our goal. And in the meantime, John and them have to get Paysex, if I believe is correct. They've got to get that drain line in. And I was pretty adamant at the last progress meeting that needed to go in ASAP. And so the pipe, whatever they need to do, they need to get it in. And we've made them very clear about it. We also asked them to dig the swell that runs from the east side of the site to the main road out front to increase that swell so we can get more of the water off of it. They couldn't get up by the corner of the building because it was so muddy, but now I was out there today, I think they can, so they should be able to go ahead and get that cut in a little bit deeper to help push some of that water. So,
that site's actually in the best shape it's been in 2 months right now.
They're going to continue, AEI is going to continue to do that around the whole footer test out in front of you, not just in this particular area that they're in, but all the way around.
Correct.
Okay.
And the interior footers as well.
And, I mean, can a deadline not be set for them to get that drainage in? I mean, it needed to be in yesterday. So before, get some more rain coming in, can somebody not say this needs to be done now?
I met with Hazex today, and my conversation with him was that if it doesn't happen in the next few days, we're going to direct Danco, the general trades contractor, to do the work
Right.
at their expense. So,
I mean, it just seems to me where you just have to kind of put your foot down and say, okay, that's it. You've got till now, and then we'll just do somebody else. And then as far as a tentative date, I know I haven't seen anything. We talked about at the board meeting, August of 18. Is that still what you're thinking? August of, okay.
I'm actually putting together, basically we're scrapping the old schedule and just starting from new. So I'm putting a phasing plan together like we talked, try to phase the structural steel, get things on site earlier, instead of waiting till the entire foundation started. Once we get 1/3 of the building or so, we can go ahead and start the masonry contractor and try to catch up. So
So you don't have to do the whole foundation.
right, just getting it far enough out in front and then bring on the next trade.
I know y'all are testing this before you do all of that. Is there testing occurring after you've got that poured and everything to make sure that that whole foundation is right?
They'll do the Shelby tube testing a couple days ahead of time. The day of the pour, they'll actually come out there and do a probe test prior to the concrete going in the ground. At that point, they'll test the concrete itself.
Saw the test on that. So that's coming back then 28 days later. And
A 7-day break and then a 28-day break.
all right, board members, there's just 3 of us. What's your
So, and then I'm a little confused about the $60,000, because that sounds like a small amount in what we're doing. So $60,000, is that just the rock?
No, that's
Or is that's everything?
total.
That's a lot of footer fill.
That's a lot, okay. It doesn't sound like a lot to me, so that would be a lot to cover
Well,
with that.
That's why I was asking for the linear, if you had an idea of the linear footage, and I mean, I know it's quite a
I've
bit.
done some calculating on the linear footage while we're sitting here. We've got those cross footings are just under or right around 600 linear feet. They're typically 2 foot 4 inches wide. All right. The footings that run on the outside of the building are roughly 320 feet long. The majority of those are 4 foot wide. That runs all the way around the I'm talking about the 2-story section. Out in front, we bring that little single-story piece out that's got the roofs on it. Those footings out there are actually a little bit smaller. They're 2 foot 5 inches wide, 2 foot 6 inches wide. So that little piece, they haven't started footings in that area, but those footings are actually some of your smaller footings on the site. Okay, so roughly 600 linear foot of cross footings, and that would include the ends of the building on the 2-story piece. And then across the front, you've got 1,200 4 foot. Some of your biggest footings on the site are the footings that are either side of the corridor, and those are 4 foot 8 inches wide. So they haven't put any of those in, but those are roughly 600 in themselves, just those 2 footings there. So hopefully we're not having to use that money to do that. I think the system we have in place where we can get this in dry weather by layering the construction will help offset some of this. So that's what we're trying to do. They can even fall back in some areas and start putting rock back in and maybe get a slab poured in an area or 2, which would help then dry the site out even further. So.
About 1,500 linear feet footer and had to go an extra foot deep. What that would cover in close. And that's a lot. I say we give them up to 60,000. They can use all that in the meantime, then we come back and see what we need to do or delay the project. And I don't think anybody wants to do that.
As we're going, John, if you don't mind to let Ariana and I know, and
Just the progress.
And obviously, if we know we run into a problem area that we feel in a couple, 3 days is going to dry out and be acceptable, we wouldn't just use that. We'd back up and do some other work in the meantime. Make the best, get the most out of a buck.
And the other thing we've done, we've asked the civil engineer, who's AEI, to give the contractors a dewatering plan. He has given them 2 dewatering plans to help dewater the site, just so that you know. Well, it's these. There's really 2 ways of dewatering. one is to put some permanent structures in, like they could put a 4-inch pipe in and leave it in place and put it in gravel. The other one's open up pits. So it's really a combination of those two things. An open pit, like a swell would be an open pit. You could have at the end of the footing, like over where we're up against the new building. You know, we got that big berm built up, and we put footings in. Well, the footings are going down 3 feet, so they may have a 10-foot long trench they could dig there and run water out towards the front of the school, and then everything hits that to just run down those footings. As the footings themselves, when concrete's been poured, would act as a trench, and they could just drain it off of that. Instead of having a wall there, which creates a dam, and now I've got a pool. Right? So, and then as they're going through it, and they get their foundation walls up, we may have them come in and drill some 1/2-inch holes in that foundation wall so water can run through. Once your building's built, it won't die, it won't be. So there'll be some things of that nature that dewatering is theirs to do, and so we're trying to push them along to do it.
I'm just thinking out loud, guys, because this is what this is for. I originally thought that I would prefer to wait and let this dry up. I'm not a fan of, it's the 50-50 gamble of pouring the money into it, not knowing whether it's going to work or not. Because we could wait and see, and like it is, it's going to stop the progress. I'm also not happy hearing that we've got some things that should have already been in place to prevent this because we knew this was a swamp to begin with. That those things aren't already in place and we're waiting on paperwork or we're waiting on somebody to lay a tile or something like that. So there's a couple of factors that's going into my decision and going through my head. My preference would be give you all a limit of the $60,000 if that's what you think it is. But it's going to be contingent on whoever your guys are that's got to have that work done and all that done in place before the $60,000 gets approved.
We can get that going in the morning if it comes to it.
Okay.
We can just direct the other contractor.
So it's like you can't have a check until you get the. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
I don't want to say yes, we're going to approve this, and you all come back to us next month and go, well, this happened and we didn't get this tile done, and we still got water on the site, and and it just gets worse. And it's like you all talked about doing that the last time, and I understand that's not completely under your control, John Hagan, but at the same time, I don't want to hear that we still have a problem because something else didn't get done.
Right. Now the 60,000 figure, it wouldn't just be here's a $60,000 change order. Go do with what you want. It would be documented. We spent $5,000, and then that could be all it is. It'd be tracked. It's not just here's 60.
Right.
If the weather report holds, once they pour Friday, they won't open any more footings until the following Thursday at the earliest if this weather report holds. So there's really not going to be any of this money spent because the rebar's in place when we start pouring.
Right.
And I think they've got a head wall set up, and they're probably going to dig some more footings the rest of this week.
We'll pour this tomorrow, and then this next piece Friday.
Okay.
Right.
So
But if you've got a rain possibility coming this weekend,
on Sunday, so they'll have everything.
this all needs to be in place and get drained off like it's and gone before the rain comes. We can't, because then you're going to be right back to where you were a month ago.
He can't install that permanent drain line that quick.
I'm not talking about the permanent that's going to stay here with the rest of the school. I'm talking about temporary to get this off of here while we're building this. I never expected that the permanent was going to be there until you all finished with the school, tore the other one down, buried it. That's something that's going to be, that's an after the fact, and that's something to keep the school dry in the future. I didn't expect that permanent to be here. But I do believe that the soil test and AIE suggested that there be something temporary from the get-go to keep it off while we were building the school. And yes, it's probably going to get destroyed, dug up, whatever. But once it's done its job, you can tear it up. Tracy, what's your final thought?
Well, I definitely want a cap on how much we spend, that's for sure. And how often, like, know how, like even day to day, how it's going as far as that money is and,
Well,
being spent.
Codel's job site foreman is required to do a daily report. Now, I don't know if he's turning those in to you on daily or weekly
Every day.
or monthly.
Yeah.
But he's required to do that. I mean, they could share those.
Yeah, all I need is an
That
email.
one's getting shared with Morgana. What's getting
I
sent
can
there.
add, all I need is an email
Right.
address, and you'll get one at the end of each day. I mean, it auto-generated.
I don't want that detail, but even something that was a short paragraph, a synopsis from,
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'd be glad to do like a weekly update, something of that nature.
where if we see something that we can go, time out.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. I will make a motion that we give you approval to do the site preparation the way you have asked, up to a dollar amount of not to exceed $60,000 without coming back to this board for more approval, with the contingency that the drains and the pipe that has already been requested and suggested be in by Friday, by this Friday.
You can do that legally. You can't put that on like that. You can't do it.
We can get some of this.
They've already been directed to further their, I mean, I personally verbally directed them to further their efforts in Meeting1.
Okay.
After that progress meeting, we convinced the civil engineer to give a dewatering plan, and he has given at least two, is that correct? Two options?
Okay.
They came up with two, and this is the one that we put together. I hate to speak out of turn here, but this is the contractor. This is Jeff Williams from Danco Construction. To put you on the spot, Jeff, how much of that pipe could you have in by Friday of what I sent you that we talked about earlier today? Cutting the swale in, tying those two rock pits together.
Well, how he made the price, and, I mean, he said he'd get out there, he had guys available to quick. I'm thinking. I'm gonna make one comment, that it's only in their best interest to get this water drained off.
No,
all right?
I
It's only in
understand
their
that.
best interest.
I understand
For
that.
us trying to say, put this drain in, that drain in, that's,
No, I understand.
we can't do that. We cannot do that to them.
Okay.
They're gonna do what's in the best interest of this project. What we wanna make sure is that the project continues, and if they run into an issue at the time of digging a footer, and one thing, if you go over this 60,000, which I don't believe you will, that's my opinion, you better come back with how many linear feet you got left, all right? If you need more, I don't think it's gonna happen. But at this point in time, I don't think we can handcuff them by saying, put this drain in, that drain in, this drain. I don't think we can. I'd like to just give them the option of using up to that point with the weekly reports on what is being used, so we're aware of how,
Okay.
and what's going on, other than delaying the project. Because if we delay the project, we're gonna get into springtime, and it's gonna be wetter, and we're gonna use more rock.
Understand.
He says on a good warm day or week, we get about 150.
That's what they've been averaging per day up to this point.
So is
Okay.
right.
Okay.
That's kind of your gauge, is when you go forward to when
Okay.
how they're.
Okay. I will withdraw my motion.
I'll make a
Mr.
motion.
Mike, would you like to correct my motion and do it, and we will go from there?
I'd just like to go ahead
That's
and make a
fine.
motion that
Yes,
we
sir.
continue with the excavation at the project site and allow the construction manager to use up to $60,000 of additional rock for additional excavation on the footers due to the problems that we're finding with the soil as we open it up.
I'll second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Appreciate it. Yep. Thank y'all for getting
Thank
together
you.
on quick notice like that.
Okay, we do have one other thing on our agenda this evening, not Spotsville related. Our February 6th work session Ms. Morgana?
It was noted in our minutes at the last meeting. Gauge from meeting to meeting, work session meetings, if we really needed those meetings. With it being next Monday, there's not any particular business that the administration needs to discuss with the board Monday night. And so if you all would like to consider us canceling that, that is a work session I feel like we could, and then have a regular meeting on the 20th.
That's fine with me. It's fine. Okay, so I can make a motion that we cancel the existing February 6th work session as previously stated. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Tracy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Work session. I need a motion to adjourn, please.
I'll make that motion.
Gee, thanks, man. I'll second that. All in favor say aye.
I don't want anybody missing.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Motion carried.